Well, hey guys, how's it going? All right. Hey, my name is Dan. I am not the normal guy up here. It's usually Jason. He does sort of the heavy lifting of the speaking around here, but every now and then I get an opportunity to get up here, and I'm really honored to be with you tonight, and thank you for braving it and the storm, whatever. Who are my snow people? I like to know what I'm dealing with before I even get started. Where are my snow people? Raise your hand. Let me hear something. Okay, there's a few of you out there, non-snow people. Where are you at? Let me hear you. Okay, the rest of you really don't care, it doesn't sound like. I'm sort of kind of in between. I was born and raised in Buffalo, New York, so I got some homies back there. But feet of snow was a way of life, you know. So as soon as I could, I turned in my snow shovel and I headed south. That was my ticket out. I joined the Navy to get out of there. So when it snows around here, I'm kind of in between, like, oh, and really, this is all you get in here? So, but it's apparently Virginia Beach schools are already like delayed 2 hours tomorrow. So, yeah, parents are really happy, I'm sure. So, but anyway, I am here tonight, and we are wrapping up this series called Strapped. And the reason we called it Strapped was because we're talking about a difficult topic. We've been talking about money. And we know that money, depending upon whether you have it or not, it doesn't seem to matter. It seems to cause problems. It can cause problems in marriages. It can cause problems if you're not married. What we know is that sometimes our finances cause us to feel like we're strapped. So that's why we called the series that. And the reason why we're looking at it is because, well, God looked at it and Jesus looked at it. In fact, when you look at the life of Jesus and what he taught a lot about this topic of generosity and money and treasures and how that sort of aligns with our heart. And Jason did a really great job over the last few weeks of talking about this topic. And how he really talked about it is he said, look, there are a number of things that God talks about, but he talks about money. How does he talk about money? How do we handle our money? So he went right to the Bible, and we've been talking about that over the last few weeks. And one of the things we found out was that there's ways of looking at money that can cause us to be strapped, and that there's something that God has for us that he can teach us about this. Now, oftentimes when you read stories in the Bible about money and treasures, you read this word called generosity. And generosity is an awesome word until you start talking about your own sort of personal generosity. When you start talking about your own personal generosity, depending on how you feel about that, it's kind of like being poked in like a soft spot. Sometimes it doesn't feel so good. And I think the reason why it doesn't feel so good when we talk about generosity in the context of talking about God is that sometimes when we start to deal with our generosity, we have to start to deal with our relationship with God. And that's what Jason was talking us through. But what I loved about what Jason did at the very beginning of the series, he said, look, I need to give us a goal here, and here's the goal I want for us when we arrive at the end of the series. He said, at the end of the series, I want us to have a deeper or a deepening trust in God. Notice I didn't say that when we get to the end of the series, I want to take a big collection and see how much money we get. No, he said, I want us to arrive with a deeper or a deepening sense of trust in God, because that has a lot to do with our generosity. Because what we see when we talk about a trust relationship with anybody is that it's very important. Because we know that when we love somebody and we really care about somebody, trust normally comes along with it. Now, if you've ever taken the Bible and you've looked at it and you said, it's a really big book, it is. It's a huge book. It's actually got 66 different books in it. But what you find is a common theme from the very early pages of that book, and it's God's love for us. And it's weaved throughout the history and the beauty and the stories of the Bible. How much he loves us, how much he's been after us for our hearts. And what's wrapped in that is this idea of trust, that we would come to him with everything and that we would trust him. So from the very beginning, he's been telling us, he's been encouraging us, he's been saying, I love you. I want you to trust me. I want your heart. I made you. You're the pinnacle of my creation. But what we have done, which is very interesting, it's almost like a parallel theme to that love deal with God, is that there we are, human beings, sort of going through life, you and I, and we've been doing a lot of things independent of God. A lot of times we say, you know what? I've got my own way. I've got my own plan. I'm all good. I don't need to worry about you. And we read those stories in the Bible. It's so awesome. Like, and when I read a story in the Bible sometimes about somebody who really messed it up, it's like you could put my face there if you looked over my history. And that's kind of why the Bible is good, because, it's sort of God saying, hey, this is what I got for you. Let me show you what you've been doing. And from the very beginning, what we've done, because we're created this way, is that we've sort of decided to kind of go it our own way. So it shouldn't be surprising that we would kind of get strapped and kind of bogged down into this idea of finances. But here's what's true. While we've been strapped, God's love never stopped. Like, throughout humanity in those stories, we went to great lengths to make sure that we distance ourselves from God, that we tried to do everything apart from Him, but yet He still loves us. And in the ultimate act of love, we get a Savior later on into the Bible. And that's kind of what we're talking about tonight, is we're talking about what it's like when we get ourselves strapped because of what we want to do. Now, I feel like I want to pause right here and kind of let's all kind of get into a huddle, because I want to make sure what I'm dealing with here, and I want to make sure that we all agree, and I want to level the playing field here. Can we all just agree for the next 30 minutes that sometimes every one of us does what we want to? Can we all agree to that? Like there's playoff games right now. You know how they get at the beginning of the playoff game, and they get everybody together, and they say, all right, on team, on three, we're going to yell the word team, so let's just agree tonight, that we all do what we want to. I mean, Mick Jagger got it, right? You can't always get what you want, but we want it, and we want it because we do whatever we want to do. So let's just all agree that that's where we're going to start off tonight. And if you're sitting there and you go, I don't ever do what I want to do, you're either a parent or you're delusional. I don't know. But so let's just agree, and it'll be a lot easier when we move on from here. And it got me to thinking, when, this idea of doing what I want to do. If I were to ask you when was a time in your life when you felt the most free, some things might come to mind. Because I think that when we talk about what we want to do, this word called freedom appears. Now, freedom is a wonderful word, especially in Western culture, and especially here in America. Like, freedom is big. Like, you start messing with people's freedom, like, it's on, right? But I'm talking about freedom in the context of God. And but when you sit and you think about a time in your life when you felt the most free, for me, hands down, it was easy. It popped into my head immediately. It was when I got my license and when I got my own car. Like, age 17... you get your license, you get a car, and I just felt like there was nothing limiting what I could do or where I could go. Now, maybe it was because I lived in a little tiny town with a great big hill on one side and a river on the other, and I sort of wanted to know what was on the other side of the hill, kind of like the Truman Show kind of thing. Like, what is out there? Like, I want to get out there. So having a car to me meant everything, because I could be completely free. But what you find out with freedom is that sometimes there are consequences to that freedom. For instance, I realized very quickly that there was a finite level of gasoline in my gas tank. And, gas was really cheap when I was driving, way back when, but still it was a lot of money to me. So you know what I got to do? I got to get a job now to pay for the gas that goes in my tank. Okay, that's kind of impinging on my freedom a little bit, because now I got to work to put gas in this car. And then another thing that you find out is that things on automobiles break. Now, when you're 16 or 17 years old, like, seriously, my parents could have given me a riding lawnmower. I would have been so happy. All I wanted was 4 wheels. I did not care. So depending on the kind of car you buy, you might have some things break on it. And then depending upon where it's located on the engine and how long it takes them to fix it, that's even more money. But it's okay. You get a little bit more job. You pay a little bit more money. You still got your freedom. And then, of course, you drive down the road and occasionally one of your tires goes flat, and you got to get that taken care of. But when it's all said and done, keep it maintained, keep gas in it, get a little job, and you're free. So that was kind of my mindset. But sometimes that freedom gets interrupted when you run into something. I don't know if you've ever run into something, but I had this happen a couple years ago. We were at Ocean Lakes High School when we used to meet there, and it was over the summer, and every summer, schools usually do like big maintenance projects, that they can't do while the kids are there. So they were putting the new air conditioner on top of the cafeteria of Ocean Lakes High School. Have you ever seen an HVAC unit that's capable of cooling a high school cafeteria? It's like the size of a small building, okay? So they put the old one in the parking lot where the staff and the volunteers parked that they had taken off the roof, and it had been there for weeks. So we got to the end of service, we were packing up the trailers, everything was good, and there were only a couple people there, and I hopped in my truck, and I threw it in reverse, and I backed up, and all of a sudden, man, like, have you ever hit something so hard that it, like, takes your breath, you know? But I'd like run into something, and I cannot, like, for a second, I'm like, what the heck did I just run into? It was that stinking HVAC they had taken off of the roof. It was right behind me. And all I did was throw it in reverse, and I backed up my truck, and bam, right into that HVAC unit. Now, this end is my sweet tailgate to my Toyota. And this is my not-so-sweet dent from that day when I backed into the AC unit. And when I did that, a couple of people appeared in my window next to me. One was one of our leaders, and he's kind of a car guy, and he walked up to me, and I was just staring straight ahead. And I got to tell you, I'm just going to be straight up with you. There were things going through my head. There were words. Like, I was a sailor long before I ever did any of this. I was making myself blush. I was thinking about things. I was so, ooh. And so one of our leaders comes up. He goes, Dan, I'm just gonna ask you one question. Are you okay? I was like, yeah, I'm okay. He goes, and he walks away. He knew the deal. And my sweet wife, Robin, of 30 years, was in our other vehicle. And she sort of like rolls up next to me, like, and I'm staring straight ahead. And she says, "You didn't see that?" And then she proceeded to go home and tell our daughter, "Look, whatever you do when your dad gets home, do not say a word to him," you know. But here's the point. The point was, I didn't see it because I didn't look for it. And you know, this is what we do with our lives all the time, is we have freedom or perceived freedom, and we get in the driver's seat of our lives, and we throw that sucker in gear, and we hit the gas, and sometimes there's a stinking HVAC behind us or in front of us, and we run into it. And sometimes we run into it over and over and over again because we think we're free, but we're not looking through the right lens. We're not looking through the right mirror. And that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about what happens when we have freedom, but not the kind of freedom that straps us. Because what God is saying is, you know what? There's things that you're not going to see that I'm going to see. And if you can get to the point where you filter everything that you're doing through my lens, when you start to look in my mirror, this is going to happen a lot less. And that's what we're talking about. We're going to talk about the freedom after being strapped. Pray with me. God, thanks so much for today. And, you know, this was a money series, but this is really not even about necessarily generosity. This is everything to do with whether we trust you or not. And there's a level of freedom that we have, that we were built with, that we were put together with, that is so awesome. But God, I just pray that we start to see that begins and ends with you. So I don't know who has to hear what today, but I just pray that they would hear what they need to hear. We love you when we pray this in your name. Amen. So if you have a Bible with you, I want you to turn to the book of Galatians. And the book of Galatians is in the New Testament. And if you don't have an easy-to-read version of the Bible, we've got some free ones out at the Get Connected table in the lobby, and we want you to have one of those, so please take one. You don't even have to talk to somebody if you don't want to. Just go get a Bible and take one because we want you to have it. Most people will get the Bible in a digital version, and you can get that at uversion.com, bible.com at your app store. And that's a great resource. You can take notes in it. You can do reading plans. You can highlight verses. But we really want you to have that because engaging the Bible helps us to understand better this big God kind of concept and how he works in our lives. And we also have an app. the Forefront app, and that's real handy because it has all the messages that are spoken here and some other information. We just want you to be able to engage your faith in real practical ways, so we offer that stuff. So anyway, we're in the book of Galatians, and in chapter 5 is an amazing verse about freedom. Because the kind of freedom that we're talking about is the kind of freedom that God gives us. That he says that instead of you getting into the driver's seat and doing whatever you want to, I've got a way for you to go. Because from those earliest pages, I've called you. I put my Son on the earth for you to see and to come to know and to put your faith in. And then he died for you, and he gave you eternal life. He took everything from you, and you can trust me because of that. And I want you to look to me when you get ready to do the things in your life. So what Paul did, Paul came into the picture shortly after Jesus leaves the scene. And what Paul did is he went around the rim of the Mediterranean. He planted churches all over the place. And when he planted churches, what he did is he went and he taught the people the very basic things of the faith. And when you read about the things that he talked about the exact same things that Jesus talked about. Jesus said, I came for you, my Father sent me because he loves you, and I just want you to have life with me, and I want you to choose me. I want you to live in eternity with me, and all I want you to do now is I want you to love God, and then I want you to go love people. And that's exactly what Paul told all of these churches that he had been planting around the rim of the Mediterranean. And then in this verse in chapter 5 of Galatians, he talks about freedom. And I love this verse. He says, you, my brothers and sisters, were called to be free, but do not use your freedom to indulge the flesh. The flesh is a Bible term, which sort of means you could insert the words, what I want. So, but do not use your freedom to indulge what you want. Rather, serve one another humbly in love. There's another version of the Bible called The Message, and The Message is sort of a contemporary paraphrase, kind of a loosely interpreted story kind of version of the Bible. And I love the way Eugene Peterson wrote this verse. He says, it's absolutely clear that God has called you to a free life. Just make sure you don't use this freedom as an excuse to do whatever you want to do and destroy your freedom. Rather, use your freedom to serve one another in love. That's how freedom grows. For everything we know about God's word is summed up in a single sentence: love others as you love yourself. That is an act of true freedom. Paul is very simply saying, look, don't get into the driver's seat of your life and just think you can go do whatever, because there's going to be consequences to that, as I saw in our illustration here. Everything that you did in your life that has separated you from God has been paid for by Jesus. God gave him to you. So live free within that. And when you do that and you start to practice that, as the Message version talked about, your freedom will expand and it will grow, and you will grow into a deeper trust relationship with me. That's what Paul was teaching. And he would say that there are amazing implications to that. The biggest one being we would begin to live unstrapped lives, because instead of looking at the things that we just within us feel are the absolute best for us, we would look at God through God's rearview mirror, and he may actually say, man, there may be another way for you. Will you listen to me, and will you follow me? But Paul also knew something else. He knew there was a bigger picture in mind. See, because Paul was writing to the church of Galatia. When he wrote all these letters to the various churches, and when you read the New Testament of the Bible, like 13 books of that New Testament were written by Paul, and they were to all these churches that he started. So let's say he might even be writing to us, and he would say, look, Forefront, here's the bigger picture. That when each of your people becomes unstrapped, your church will become unleashed. Let me say it again. If every single one of us became unstrapped, our church would become unleashed. But wait, I thought this was a giving series. No, wait a second. Let's go back to Jason's one of his opening statements. We want to arrive with a deeper and a deepening trust in God. In fact, Jason, he said the critical verse for this series is Matthew 6:21. For where your treasures are, there your heart will be also. And what that means is we will align ourselves with what we treasure. So what Paul here is saying is, look, when each individual person decides and makes a decision that God is going to be the one that they are going to trust no matter what, then not only will that free you as an individual, but when you get together in this beautiful thing called the church, amazing things will happen. It readies us to be in the best position for every person that comes through that door out there. When they come through the door, if all of us were so sold out and trusting in God completely, every single person that comes through that door would feel welcomed, and they would feel loved, and they would feel like, man, the people that I meet there just blow me away. They want the best for my life. And the other reason why it's so important within the framework of the local church is because it teaches us to be able to walk out of the church and do the very same things for a world and a community that needs that. Could you imagine if every single person in your life looked at you and said, they are the most loving, they are the kindest. When I'm around them, they just make me want to be better. That's really what Paul got to. All of that writing in the New Testament was all from what Jesus handed to us, and Paul took it. He took it to the max. This was a guy who persecuted Christians at one point. But when he came into that relationship with Jesus and Jesus exploded his heart, man, he went all the way, and he taught us these amazing things for our lives and what could happen with our church. It would almost be like if Paul wrote the book to the church of Forefront. What would he say? You know, at the beginning of all of Paul's writings, he sort of greets them. So he might say, Church of Forefront, how's it going? Glad you made it through the snowstorm. Hey, look, I got something to tell you. Look, listen to me. God did not create you to live lives for yourselves. God created you to trust Him and then go kick the doors down for Him in a community that loves you and needs you. Go live an other-centered life. I want you to really trust Jesus because He saved me and He saved you. Now take Him inside of you and go help the world. He would say, you should be in a trust relationship with God, and then your church will be in that trust relationship. And then you'll become the hope of the world. In a couple of months, Forefront's going to be 18 years old. In that 18 years, can you imagine the thousands of people that have come through the door? I've been here for about 17 of those years. I've seen them. And you know, there have been hundreds and hundreds of people that have come to that decision to trust God with everything. There's a great writer and pastor, his name is Bill Hybels, and he wrote this book called Courageous Leadership. And in it he said, I believe to the very depths of my soul that the local church is the hope of the world. He said that there is no other organism, living, breathing organization that has the power to steward and caretake the transforming message of Jesus to a world that needs it more than the local church. You know what that means? That means when all of us live unstrapped lives and we gather together here and we learn what that means, we have the potential to radically change people's lives that we don't even know. You can do it in your workplace. You can do it in your home. You can do it on the road. You can do it on the store. Whoever you touch in your life can be impacted by that idea. That's why we did this series. It wasn't to make you more generous. That's not what it was designed to do. We designed the series so that we would arrive with a deeper and deepening trust in God so that we could go out and be the hope of the world. It's an amazing opportunity because here's what happens. And you know this because some of you have had this experience and you've seen this or you've felt this. There's something inside a person that says there's something more than the life that they're leading. And you see that and you feel that when you go through a life where you're strapping yourself and you're running into things, or you're getting yourself into debt that you can't get out of, or you're moving into relationships that you think will be the most beautiful thing in the world, and it ends up strapping you even more. And there's people who are walking around the world, and there's a disconnect inside of them, and they know it, and they want it, and they want to understand what it is, and they just feel that maybe there's a God who loves them. Maybe there's a God who cares about them. And so they start thinking that maybe I can walk through the door of the local church. And so, if we can be in the best position as individuals and together, we could do wonders with everybody that we encounter. So our call really is to exercise the freedom that God gives us when we are willing to look into his mirror and to go the way that he has for us, because it just sets us up to impact the world that needs us. So you might be sitting here and you might be saying, man, are you telling me that I can really trust God with everything? I would say yes, of course. I'd say, man, that's really hard. You mean everything? Like, you have no idea what I've been through. No, I probably don't know what you've been through. But I know that he's got you. I know that he can. And you telling me that'll make me free? Yeah, I am. And I know that because it happened to me. And it wasn't because I read anything in the Bible or that I heard anything from a sermon. I walked into this church, one of those people, thinking that there was something inside of me that was missing. I was running around doing a lot of this in my life. And I walked in here, and we were meeting in Regal Cinema at the time, and I walked in, I remember going in there thinking, I was 37 at the time. I walked in thinking, I know what I'm going to get. This was like a Hail Mary for me in my life. It was this or who knows. And I was like, I know I'm going to meet somebody who's going to be a jerk. I'm probably not going to be dressed right. I'm sure there's going to be some judgmentalism going on here right after I hear about all the rules. But what happened was somebody reached out to me, and they made a connection with me, and they just wanted to get to know me. And I remember walking away thinking, if Jesus actually were in front of me, I actually think he would treat me like that guy just did. And the guy that baptized me loves God, and he loved God, and he was cool, and he dressed worse than I did, and he trusted God. And you know what he did for me? He taught me how to look in the rearview mirror so I wouldn't back my life up into another stinking HVAC unit. And when I started to do that, you know what happened? Things changed. When I started to filter my life through the freedom of God, everything changed. The trajectory of my life changed. The entire trajectory of my family changed. That was almost 17 years ago. Nothing that's going on right now in my life would have been going on had it not been for that experience. Absolutely nothing. I'm steering clear because somebody reached out to me and who was actually trusting in God. You have no idea how you're going to be used when you start to surrender to that kind of idea. Not only does your life start to change, but you change. And man, you start impacting people you have no idea. But I'm also a pastor here. And for the last 11 years on this staff, I have watched hundreds of life-changing stories going on here. It's amazing what has happened here. I've seen lives turn 180 degrees. I've seen people beat addictions. I've seen people struggle in relationships and get healing from that. I've seen our church go to the corners of the world and bring water and bring food and bring just plain old friendliness and love to other people. I've watched kids go to Mexico and build houses. I've watched people go to Miami and take care of orphans. In our own backyard, I've watched our people go and outfit homeless kids in Virginia Beach. It almost sounds too awful to be true. Homeless kids in Virginia Beach, getting them ready for school. Women who are in crisis pregnancies being loved on. Homeless people being given hygiene supplies. And you know what? There's a bunch of kids right now in our children's ministry area. You know what's happening to them tonight? They're going to hear some teaching that's going to help them to learn how to trust God. Because God willing, all of us that are older than them will go in the ground before they will, and they will become the church. They are the hope of the world right now, and they don't have a clue. I cannot wait to see them grow into those roles. And that's the potential here. You cannot afford to not address your trust level with God. And if you're new here today, and this is completely foreign to you, and you think this is all crazy, I think you're in the best possible place that you could be, because this is a good place to come and ask really hard questions and tear it apart and really explore it and see what's going on. And some of you have been here for a really, really long time, and you've been sort of thinking that you're really all in and trusting God, but maybe you're not. I don't know. You may be looking through the wrong mirror. There may be some of this going on, and you're trying to figure out why. God's got an unstrapped life for you when you really take that hard look. And this is how you do it. Right outside this door is our mission statement's up on the wall there, and it says, people helping people find and follow Jesus. And I think there's two words in that mission statement that if we were to focus on and start to think about a little bit, I think it would help all of us, because every single person here has a next step. Every single person here has something that they can do to deepen their trust level with God, to bring about their fullest potential to be able to impact the people around them and to be able to impact a world that needs to hear about an amazing God. And those words are find and follow. Find and follow. In that mission statement are those two key words, find and follow. When you find, you do things like, I would say, ask God what you need to see. When you go to find, ask God what you need to see. Get in a quiet place somewhere. Start to have a conversation with Him. If you've never done that before, that's called praying. Just have a conversation with Him. God, I have no idea what I'm doing. God, I don't even know if you exist. God, I thought I trusted you. God, I really trust you, but why do I keep running into things? Start talking to Him. Ask Him to begin to reveal things in you. Maybe it's your generosity. Maybe it's your kindness. I don't know what it is. Ask Him. He will start to show you that. I would say come here every week and consume every shred of this teaching, every bit of the worship, every ounce of what we're teaching your kids, and immerse in it and let it change you. Another one, small groups. We have 22 small groups here. These are small groups of forefronters that meet in people's living rooms once a week. And it's in those small groups where we wrestle with these really difficult things and we try and figure out how to deepen our trust level with God. The very ironic thing is, when I came to church for the first time and none of the stuff that I thought would happen happened and people were actually nice, the next thing they said was go to a small group. And I said, I promise I will hate that. I will find whatever I can do to hate that. Do you know what I'm in charge of here? Small groups. If God is nothing, He's got a sense of humor. You've got to try it. And some of you have not, and you keep hearing about it. Please do yourself the favor. Come talk to me. Let me lean on you a little bit. It will change you. And if you haven't been in one in a while, you should get back because you know it's the best thing for you. I would say serve. Find a place and really reach out to somebody. When you start giving yourself away a little bit in service, it changes you. All of these things, what they do is they begin to form this crust of trust towards God. And that verse in Galatians in the Message talks about how freedom grows. As you start to do this, your freedom feeling will grow. You'll want to do this more and more. Maybe you need to go to Financial Peace University. Look, we're going to do that class. And if you came here for the last 3 weeks, you said, my finances are a dumpster fire, take the class, okay? Maybe that's all you got out of this 3 weeks. You can't afford to not take the class, and if you think you can't afford it, please come to me. let us help you get in there. It will change everything. You know, it's not just a finance series. It's going to change your marriage. It's going to change how you deal with your children. It's going to change your future. Give it a shot. The last word, follow. If you can start to find, you can follow. And when you follow, it's practicing every day to lift your eyes up before you put it in gear and look and see what God's got to say about whatever it is you're getting ready to deal with. It doesn't mean that God's going to go, I'll take care of it, no problem, don't you worry about it. You know, rebellious child, hey, don't worry about it, I got it. You know, you can't pay your bills, hey, don't worry about it. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying that he gives us a way. He starts to change how we think. He teaches us lessons. He puts people in our path. And sometimes he steers us around the things that'll hurt us. But we have to be willing to at least, you know, filter what we're doing through him. And when we start to do that, we become more willing, more teachable, and more loving. And when you become more willing, teachable, and loving, man, that deepens your trust level because you realize just how much you need him. We have a lady in our small group. She just got baptized within the last few months. Now, a lot of us in my small group, we have been in small group and in church for a fairly long time, some for decades. She is brand new. You know how much this stuff means to her? She weeps when she reads the Bible because her heart has been completely changed by what has happened in her life. And that's what can happen. When you filter things through God, you become teachable, you become willing, you become more loving, you become more humble. And when that happens and that takes hold in a life, you build a trust level that will never, ever, ever allow you to be in a position again where you're unstrapped. Let's pray.